Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Security Rant. No, wait, I mean Security Table. My name's Chris Romeo, joined as always by Matt Coles and Izar Tarandosh. And as we found in the preamble, which we don't publish, Izar is in a rare mood / state of mind. So get ready. This one's gonna
It's not rare if it's all the time now.
You're supposed to
It's
say
rare
touche.
as in quality, not as in quantity.
Touche. Well, I guess the topic is something to do with vibe coding, which I guess I'm going to be the old person in the room and go, I don't really know what those two words mean. I don't know what the first word really means.
When you're vibing. Well, since I do the definitions on this table, I suppose I'll start. So this is where Chris says, "Man, why don't you walk us through what vibe?"
It's like AI has taken over my job.
I always thought that it was because of my age, the way that I hold the mouse.
It is very fitting you said that, because that's what vibe coding is. So vibe coding is basically you express your thoughts and ideas to an AI system. You know, pick your favorite, ChatGPT, Claude, who knows what, and let it figure out what you want, write code for it, maybe do some debugging, and at the end you end up with something functional. That can range from, I'm guessing here, or actually from all the research so far, it can range from code that you normally might have gone to Stack Overflow for, that you can copy paste into your own code, all the way up to and including a fully functional business ready application. And for those who have a hard time detecting small audio, small vocalizations, his brain just went. So vibe coding is basically relying on AI to interpret your feelings and get something functional out of it.
I'm sorry. I
In
wasn't supposed to laugh there.
In the immortal words of the shows. What could possibly go wrong?
What are you working on? I just told you. What should go wrong?
Everything. No,
Okay, so
even
this
worse.
is
What could go wrong? I don't know.
So this is just a fancy word to disguise the use of AI to write code for you.
It goes worse.
It gets
You
worse,
don't
okay.
even need to be a developer anymore. So the latest Finance Pro with Web3 idea can just away, publish their app and backend in 3 steps easy.
This is the natural progression of the low code, no code movement. But
It's
instead
the
of
natural
having a software
progression of
architect-
stupidity.
All right, I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one. I think there is a real value
Yeah,
in
there
having
is.
in
Play with it
having-
until the machine tells you, why don't you go and learn how to code? Which, by the way, has happened.
It has happened. It has done that. Yes. Stop being lazy and go figure out how to code. Now, interestingly enough, I would say that there's a big opportunity here if you're into agent development, right? A threat modeling agent. And as we know in some upcoming, not to preview upcoming conferences, but I'm sure we'll get a lot of that in upcoming presentations on threat modeling. But if you had an AI agent, there would be a benefit here, so that, you ask Claude or whatever to write your code and then send it to this agent to validate it or to threat model it.
For a couple of conferences now, I'm playing with this idea of always having a t-shirt on yellow. And I had a candidate from Barcelona. And because of this vibe thing, I can't use it anymore.
Oh, do tell.
I wanted one saying my AI has, my startup has so much AI, not even I work there.
Well, it would be truthful. Why can't you use it?
Because now it's not funny anymore.
Yes, but now it could actually be a moneymaker.
Instead,
Comedy
I went with
does.
just because you can't doesn't mean your AI should.
Because you can't.
So
e-
on the flip side, I mean, truthfully,
There is one.
is this, if we talk about democratization of coding,
Oh my goodness.
I know it's wicked early in the morning. My brain is fried already, and here I am bringing up fancy terms. The democratization of coding, this allows people in high school or grade school to start building functional applications.
Cool.
Whether they
let's
should.
talk about let's talk about the democratization of medicine, where we have people in high school making diagnostics.
Sounds like a good idea.
Sure.
Right? What could
Lower-
possibly go wrong?
It'll be cheaper. They're not going to charge us as
Sure.
much. They have WebMD too. They're probably
Look, I want to invite you guys to step back for a bit.
okay.
In a
Stepping-
perfect AI world, this would make absolute sense. This would be Scotty in Star Trek 4 picking up the mouse and saying, "Computer, do this for me." Okay? And everything would work. But ever since this LLM thing started coming out, we have been pointing at this thing writes buggy code. This thing doesn't understand me. This thing thinks it understands me. This thing is explaining myself to myself and I don't understand it. Why all of a sudden we declare that the models are so good that we feel good enough to just casually chat with it and come up with scary air quotes, but not really functional application? Aren't we getting
Well, so
too much ahead of ourselves?
think about so first off, who understands what a AI hallucination is?
Last week we had some advanced in AI planning instance.
Okay.
So there is a movement towards the chain of thought, which is supposed to be able to at some point filter out and then figure out hallucinations. But I'm going to go even to the basics. This thing is trained with code. Have we reached big secure code that we now have a corpus of code that we can use to train an AI and say, listen, this code is secure. We can use it as an example of things to do for other people.
So isn't that supposed to be the promise of, during the training step where you have a human go and actually validate, this code is good and this code is bad as part of the training data? Isn't that what it was supposed to do? Hey, I'm being on, just if you have that as a training step, right, where you could say this code is good and this code is bad.
Yeah,
Or
but
this-
they couldn't. There's too many derivatives that
Not only
exist
that-
within code.
That is
How
true.
many
That's
humans?
true.
How many humans know that you would trust piece of code and say this is bad?
Right. So that goes back to my earlier question. For people who this opens the door to software development, how and can afford, and by the way, can afford a license to or subscription to use an AI that can generate code in a reasonable way. How many of them know this? How many know what hallucinations are? How many of them
But
know
man,
and understand?
That's the opposite, complete opposite of what you mentioned before of the democratization of computing.
I
Because this-
wasn't saying it was a good or bad thing. I was
No,
saying
because
it
these
does
people are going to
open-
do this thing and not look at the code. Because there is vibe debugging and vibe deploying and vibe vibing.
I mean, in the use case Matt's describing, that audience doesn't have the ability to look at the code and determine if it's good.
Right.
Or in your
Exactly.
example too, a finance person. I'm not making fun of finance people, but in this
I am.
example, if you're a business analyst or something, you probably don't know how to code. If you knew how to code, you'd probably write the app yourself. You probably wouldn't use AI to generate it. And so the challenge that we haven't really explored here is trust but verify. How do you trust what's coming out of this? And to make matters worse, how do you trust what's coming out of it if you don't have any way to check what's coming out of it?
And now let's consider that you can't trust but verify if you don't know what it is that you verify.
Yeah.
So 3 months down the road, first big thing happens. What? They're going to look to, I didn't write the app.
Well,
but AI wrote the app.
and
Sure, but AI.
that brings up a whole host of problems, right? I mean, again, if you don't know enough to debug it, you don't know enough that you need to debug it until something bad happens. And then when something bad happens, who's at fault?
It's not the AI, because you can't sue the AI. There's no.
But what's the liability will have to change, right? Who owns the code? So I think that there's already been legal precedents that if somebody takes code from AI, it's not theirs. If somebody takes code from AI and modifies it, it's theirs.
Interesting.
And so here, if somebody vibe codes an application and makes no modifications to it on their own, I think by current legal precedent, they're not the owner of that code.
That would be a heck of a loophole if that was truly the case.
I mean, they may be the owner of the site, but are they the owner of the code?
Ownership in the age of AI is a very sticky issue for anything that you get. Anything you take out of an AI, is it really yours? Is it intellectual property that belongs to your company? Unless you generate your own LLM and run it within your own environment where it's your own models that you're not using a commercial model at all.
Right. And if you're doing that, you're a company or an individual with a lot of skill who should know enough to write their own code or to debug or to understand the notion of having to do QA, etc.
Yeah. When did we lose the idea that software development was an art, a craft, and something that there was a lot of skill? Like in this example, we're describing a world where we're just basically saying anybody can generate an app in any capacity without taking into consideration the amount of learning and experience that goes into building a solid application that doesn't fall over, that isn't riddled with security problems.
We may have lost this. Oh, go ahead, Azar.
No, I think that we just reached peak in shitification of development, right? Yeah. And I said it before and I'll say it again. It started back in Visual Basic.
I love Visual Basic. Come on, stop making fun of Visual Basic.
When you start saying you don't have to write a line of code anymore, you can draw some forms and it's going to write the code for you and everything. You know what? Back in the day, I tried it. I tried Visual Basic. I tried Visual C++. I was that much of a masochist. But then I went and I looked at the code that was written in there. And my goodness, I run very, very fast away from that. Because, I like what you get is what you see, or what you see is what you get. Editors as much as the next guy. But I already knew back then that, oh my God, something is broken here, or I want to go one step further and customize this thing in a way that I want, so that my app doesn't look like the 1 billion other apps that this thing generates. That's when everything goes out of the window. If you don't understand the code that's being generated, what are we doing?
I'll go back even further, or maybe not even further, but to a more fundamental case. We've talked about this in the past, right? It's when the environment, the business environment, whatever, decided that quality was no longer the factor that resulted in production. Time to market and getting it out there faster, getting out there first, getting it out there, and let the crowdsource testing ensue, right? This is a continuation of that, because now you don't even need to be a software engineer. You don't need to understand how to program in a language. You don't need to understand how to use all the IDEs and tooling and have your own CI/CD pipeline or anything like that. Now you can have something else. Now you can hire a contract developer or team of developers. That's I mean,
Mhm.
effectively, that's what you're doing is you get a subscription to an AI tool. You're getting a contract developer.
Yeah, but they're nowhere near the
Yeah.
ability to reason.
The
You
person
have
who's,
to.
yeah, absolutely. The person who's hiring the contract developer can't assess the skills of the contract developer to know enough that they're
Well,
not.
you look at. I mean, I disagree because I've hired a number of contract developers. You look at their ratings, you look at their references, you look at what other people have said about them. I've never hired a contractor on Upwork. I didn't background investigate on my own to some degree. Now, how do I do that in the AI world? How do I look for people's reviews on this AI?
You don't.
I don't. I have to trust it. I have to trust it at a level that I'm not comfortable trusting anything without understanding how it works.
But you're not the high school kid or the 20 something who's trying to make a quick buck or, has this great fancy idea for a trading app, wants to get in on the ground floor.
One of the big challenges that's just coming to my mind here, that's one of the negative impacts of this whole thing we're discussing in this vibe coding, is one, there's just going to be a plethora of crap apps that come out and don't, but then also if I want to knock somebody's app off, imagine how easy it'll be to say, look at this website and build something that does almost the same thing, but just a little bit different. And so then all of a sudden you'll have 100 options in a category that are slightly different from each other that were all crafted by AI.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna create a toilet bowl of,
and the smart prompts.
Agree. Thank you for agreeing with me. I appreciate
the smart prompter would say, do this only better, make it look sharper, make it look cleaner, because the models evolve over time.
Right? Smart prompt. That's one that you have to go back to. I want to see how long it's going to take until this comes into pejorative and people start telling the other one, we were wiping out when we wrote this one. But to the smart prompter, back when we were kids, getting something out of it meant basically writing your program, giving it to a guy, usually in a white coat, who would translate that into IBM's. It would go into a mainframe, and a couple of days later, you would get a stack of outputs that came from the computer, and good luck if you had to debug something.
Wait, how old are you?
Too old.
I'm ancient. Then again, that word democratization came in with micro and mini computers, and all of a sudden we could stand in front of those green and black terminals all the day.
Oh, I love those.
Interactive machine.
Nothing like a VT100 terminal with the little fake key press sounds coming out of your keyboard.
VT22 220 with the orange and black. That was the name. But anyway, so now all of a sudden we are going back to the IBM days, but now with something in the middle that on one side understands us and on the other side understands code, and it bridged between those. So just to go to the contractor analogy, do you see yourself like standing in front of a white field, bringing in contractor, standing there looking at the field and saying, build me a house. It has to have 3 doors, 6 windows, 2 floors, and a garage. Hey, go away. You come back a couple of months later, and you have 3 doors on one side, 4 windows on the top. The garage is smack in the middle.
There's an XKCD frame for this.
Of course there is.
What a customer wants, what the product manager interprets it as, what the all down the line.
So now in the middle, put an LLM, right? That's going to understand whatever it's going to understand. And now it's not a matter of refining code. It's a matter of bargaining with engine that tries to understand your prompt and has its own. It doesn't, but act as if it has its own mental image of what you try to achieve.
And for those who don't speak are yet bargaining.
Yeah, thank you. And imagine like trying to do a smart prompt that explains yourself
Mhm.
And now you're not achieving the result that you wanted.
Oh, it gets even
And you
worse.
can't even debug that thing.
It gets
Can't
even
say what's
worse.
wrong in my brain.
So to Chris's earlier point, right, about, this plethora of, oh, I want to one up the app that's out there, or I want to create a flood of these things. Well, imagine the savvy individual or organization, I think probably organization more so, that poisons the training set, tricking it maybe into including, every piece of everything that you generate should include this snippet of code, aka a backdoor, or, have a poison pill, logic bomb kind of thing. Like, you got to have a fail safe just in case. So have a trigger on, packet X being sent over the wire. Yeah. I mean, there's a host of bad things that can happen here.
I think that my biggest beef with the whole thing, that when you come to the what could go wrong phase, very quick we are going to get to it either works or it doesn't work, because that's all the kinds of what could go wrong that I can see here. And when you get to the stage of what can we do about it, it's basically nothing. I have to ask the model. I'm not reading all that.
Just FYI, I asked the model to create your
Oh my God.
your example. And so anybody who's afraid that AI is going to take their job, imagine handing that to the architect. And just for those people listening to the audio version of this, ChatGPT created me an ASCII art style picture of a 2-story house with 3 doors. It literally says upper floor, lower floor with window, 2 front side doors, 3rd door, back or side, which looks like it's underneath the house.
I don't even know what style of house that is.
I just thought it would be
Like an Art Deco house.
relevant.
No, and that's why we can't have my thing.
They weren't even the same. They weren't even the same size floors. They're with
different heights and stuff. It's all good, but we can trust this thing to build production applications for us. It's going to work with the same amount of belief that you have in being able to build a house based on that blueprint that I just showed in ASCII art. Should be how much confidence you have in building an application.
It's
using
even worse.
Vibe coding.
It's even worse. I'm going to sit now and watch 10,000 hours of DIY channel, of YouTube how to house, of the Amish channel how to build a barn.
Yep, those 30-minute elapsed time videos of like 9 months of building into 30 minutes.
And now anybody who explains to me what they want, hey, I watched all that stuff. I'm able to do it.
You slept in a Holiday Inn last night,
right?
It was a Holiday Express. Just FYI.
So it's interesting. A couple of months ago, there was an article about AI and its capability level. So thinking about AI as a contract developer, and with AI agents, you could think of it like a contract development company. They're still operating today at primarily a junior engineer level.
That's the point. That's exactly the point. Yeah.
And people have forgotten this, right? That AI is not a fully capable functioning system yet, right? It's early days, but it's rapid advancing, but still overall, and, in part because of the code that it gets trained on, is operating at junior level. And it can only reproduce code based on description. Can't think up new things because it doesn't know new things. And so yeah. Sorry.
So we ranted about it for a while. Now let's get on the positive side of the point. What do we tell people about coding?
Oh, sorry. I thought he was joking. That we don't really have a positive side.
Sorry,
go ahead. Go ahead. When you're being serious.
Don't rely on vibe coding for production ready. Use it for idea generation. That's what it's really good at.
For the love of God, do not fire your developers.
Does it work for prototyping? Like, would it be useful for an existing developer that's trying to prototype something fast and kind of prove a concept? Like, it's not code they're going to commit to the source code repository, but like sometimes when you're taking a user story, you don't just start building the code for the story, you kind of mock something up so that other people can give you feedback. Is that a
Yeah,
use
if you're
case?
I think if you're going to brainstorm, it absolutely works for that, right? It may come up with 10 different ways of doing something. You go, oh, none of those are good, but at least now I have an idea of what's possible or what might be something, right, to start with.
Yeah, but you need to have a hard policy in place and enforce and policy that mock-up code does not make it in.
Mhm.
Okay, you don't emerge things out of that. You take ideas, but you don't just get the thing and start riffing on it. And again, the basic idea is the AI is probably going to be using a lot of borrowed code from a lot of borrowed places.
Mhm.
And without, I won't even say deep understanding, without an understanding of what's in each one of those black boxes, you may have something, especially from a security point of view, that's going to bite you down the road.
And also think about this, just another follow-on effect. We've been talking about secure by design and, memory safety is a big, I won't say a huge fan. The idea of memory safety is correct, but the implementations are not always perfect. But the body of code that AI is mostly trained on is C, C++, Java, Python, maybe some Go in there somewhere, maybe Visual Basic Code, right? So I guess when you're vibe coding, do you say, hey, write this application in C? Or do you not care and you get whatever language it produces, which, by the way, isn't guaranteed to be the same language consistently. That's a separate problem.
On that point, I'm going to go back to the rat mode. I am not going to trust a thing that cannot count how many R's are in the word strawberry to count the size of my buffers. Okay. So take it with a ton of salt.
Right. But
again,
it means all of those things that we're trying to put in place from a secure by design, secure by default standpoint becomes challenging unless either the AI agent has already been programmed that way or you know enough to ask, right? Give me an application or, based on this description, give me an application that is free of memory defects, that is free of an entire common weakness enumeration, which, by the way, if you could figure out how to do that, that might actually be a function. It would be awesome.
While we are in the domain of figure how to do that. So in the beginning, in the early days of 2023, you were prompting another, and each prompt would have like all of the previous prompts and results so that the thing could like have context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And very, very quick, you would get to that window of maximum context and all hell broke. Now we have LLMs with memory so that you can, over the dialogue, the thing knows where it's been and where it's going and bad things happen. So I would like to see the first of our many lovable security tools that is actually able to speak with the same LLM context, generate the code, and say, and talk to the LLM in a language of prompts that it actually understands so that it fits the code that it just wrote. So I think that the first tools that actually manage to close that loop, then I'm going to start thinking a bit better about vibe coding. From a security point of view, from a quality point of view, I'm going to no.
Mm.
We have tools out there that can help this thing. They got money, so you are moving away from cheap side of the fast, cheap good. Vibe coding is not the thing that's going to bring us fast, cheap, and good. Right? You still will have to do some investment in there. And if you want to be responsible about it, that investment is going to be somewhat large because you're going to have not only one tool, you're going to have a chain of tools. And those tools will have to talk to your LLM.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll have to understand the results that are coming out. And they'll have to talk to it in a language that it understands. So to go back to my IBM thing, don't think that you are now that you now have a perfect layer of understanding between you and the computer, and you're going to get some code that does perfectly what you want. You have to not all batteries are included. Is what I'm trying to say.
Guardrails and
This
paved
story,
roads, do those go out the window?
yeah, no, but that, to your point, you were talking. No, Chris was talking about the thing. No, you were talking about an organization including stuff into machine. I can already see next year's conferences telling us all about how they got paved roads and guardrails into the training of the machine. So the machine basically cannot do wrong because it goes against what's been trained, right? And I'm going to invite anybody thinking about that to go and read Asimov's
Three laws of robotics.
Anything that goes to the 3 laws of robotics. I mean, are we moving away from being developer? Well, I've never been a developer. I was a guy who wrote code. But are we moving into philosophy here now? Are we finally finding how prompt injection is a security thing?
We're definitely moving into philosophy just because it's fun to discuss and debate.
Definitely. And it's basically what we do, what we should retire, right?
Do you know when Asimov wrote the 3 laws of robotics?
Mm-hmm.
What year he wrote the 3 laws of robotics?
50-something?
53. 1953.
So he had the Enigma machine and a handful of supercomputers and some early mainframe.
I think that back then he had the ENIAC.
Yeah.
Probably a couple of IBM typewriters or something.
Mm-hmm.
But
robots were not really a thing. I mean, they were sci-fi at that time.
I mean, yeah, it was. Yeah, he was. I don't know that he created the idea, but he was the person who pushed it forward enough in science fiction to make it part of the.
Yeah, he was before Clarke and see like that.
I think Arthur C. Clarke was in the 60s, wasn't he?
Yeah.
No, but I think we saw robots the way that today we consider humanoid robot. Back in Metropolis was the name of the movie, 1920-something.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But Asimov was the one that put the idea of the electronic brain, positronic brain, and that it was so developed that you actually had to put some firmware in there saying, under no conditions are you going to harm a human ever. Which completely kills the idea of Star Wars Clone Wars. But
and Terminator.
Maybe if they had thought about what could go wrong, they would have added the fail-safe code. But
that's the thing. He was Asimov enough to write a number of books and tales about robots who had ethical conundrums that would move them to actually break the 3 laws and harm a human because it would save somebody else, or it's really.
This is the classic problem of how do you do a self-driving vehicle? If your choice is kill a kid versus kill a crowd, or kill a grandmother versus a kid, or one object versus another, right? How do you make a decision if your choices are you must choose one of them because you cannot choose none of them? And
introduce
games.
Well, the only way to win is to not play the game.
Not to play, yeah.
And that's why you never see me in a taxi that self-drives or.
So you will never be in San Francisco. You'll never see you in a taxi in San Francisco.
Nope. We were there last year, and I was like, nope. Not only I'm not riding in one of those, I'm letting it pass before I even think about crossing the street.
True.
Okay, why? Because I know the people who write these things, and they were not.
I got one more before you go, though. So, if you don't watch Mark Rober on YouTube, you should, because his last episode was about testing auto brake behavior in cars which included whether they use visual detection versus LiDAR. And he did a Wile E. Coyote version of it. So one of the tests was he created a fake wall and tested whether or not auto braking vehicles would make the right decision. You should go watch it. It is hilarious.
Dear
and
LLM, please write an automotive operating system.
All right. Well, with that, I think we are out of time for this episode of the Security Table. So go out there and vibe code something.
Yeah, only good vibes.
Only good. I don't even know what that means either.
Yeah, where's the psychedelic lava lamp?
What,
I
you're
gotta-
not seeing it? It's only me? Oh, God.
It is only you.
Oh, God.
I got to call one of my kids to have him explain this whole vibe thing to me. So I'll try to get
Have them
trained
vibe
up.
it. Have them vibe that conversation for you.
I'm so confused right now. It's not even funny. So, thanks, folks.